right club. Be the right club today. Yes!
Again, has to be careful of the speed.
What a comeback season for Hal Sutton.
Come right back toward the hole.
How about in? That's the second eagle he's made it for this week.
17 years later, Hal Sutton is the Players' Champion.
He's got it going right at the flagstick. It'll be up. It is.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Be the Right Club Today podcast. Hal, part two, Brandel, Chamblee.
You and I already know where it went, but
Yeah.
it's exciting to hear his viewpoints, and
Yeah.
he's so educated. That would be the word that I would put. He's really educated himself on the game of golf, and not just the swing,
Yeah.
but the way you play golf.
It was kind of funny. We had a few students come in kind of upset that we cut this into two parts. They liked the first part so well. They were like, I feel like you left me at a cliffhanger, but now you guys, be rest assured, you'll get part two. Here it is. You guys enjoy part two, Brandel, Chamblee.
Says play conservative golf.
At least into greens, aggressive off the tee, conservative into greens, basically.
Yeah, I suppose, but I mean, it's aggressive off of the tee within a dispersion cone. So you just lay your dispersion cone out there, and you have an aiming point. You just don't deviate from your dispersion cone. If your dispersion cone doesn't fit out there in the fairway, if you don't have a 60 wide yard from bad trouble to bad trouble, or from trees to trees, if you don't have that dispersion cone, it's not a driver play. And they give you very specific aiming points that would differ from a lot of them. That's why I've said, some of their students are coming out and schooling veterans who have not taken the time. And I'll give you a good example. The first hole at Royal Melbourne it's a short little par four, which straight away with just a slight turn up near the green that almost everybody laid up and hit wedge into. Okay. And Ernie Els was adamant that you lay up there. And I think he didn't even play Hao Tong Lee because Hao Tong Lee wanted to go for that green until singles, or, he was upset with Hao Tong Lee's strategy to hit driver there. Well, the Decade guys had laid the dispersion cone, and they've done the numbers, right? They run it. And now other stats guys can do this as well. They've run it. And the play 100% of the time was hit driver, send it. Okay. It was not layup. And again, that is where numbers, if let's say a player, of course, if a player's snap hooking it one day or snap slicing it, well, he probably wouldn't be on the team, or he probably wouldn't be playing. I mean, if he's good enough to be there, he can keep it in a 60-yard cone. And if you could keep it in a 60-yard cone, 100% of the time, the play is to hit driver at Royal Melbourne. I'm assuming that it's not 50-mile-an-hour wind in or whatever. And that is just one example of where young players who are looking at Google Earth and using Google Maps to plot out strategy have advantages over veterans. And they know the play. They know what's right. And so, Kathy Whitworth wrote a beautiful book. What the heck is it? It's a beautiful book. That I laugh at. I'll send it to Scott sometimes, just jokingly, where she writes, she has, a page. She won 88 times, more than any other professional golfer, 88 times on a major tour. And she said, you aim at the middle of the greens. Okay. That's her secret. So you aim at the middle of the greens. You take trouble out of play. You play conservative. Jack Nicklaus, same thing. Ben Hogan, as good as he was, when he won at Marion in 1950, I was reading this yesterday in some old Grantland Rice articles. And Hogan was talking about, he ran into Grantland Rice early in the week in 1950. And he said of Marion that this golf course is so hard and so demanding that he will not aim at a single pin that week. This is on like Tuesday of 1950 of the, he goes, now this is arguably the greatest ball striker that's ever lived, certainly the greatest ball striker in that event that week, who would not take on a single pin. Okay. That he was going to play conservative. You know, the shot that High Peskin took the photo of Ben Hogan in the 18th green at Marion, that is probably the most famous photograph ever taken in golf. That's a 1-iron, and Ben hit it 40 feet. And, you know, if you see that, you think, oh, Ben must have stuffed it. No, he hit it 40 feet and 2-putted to get into the playoff. But his strategy was just to hit it at the middle of the greens. And, you know, we love to think about Johnny Miller never seeing, you know, going at every flag, and Lanny Watkins going at every flag. And those things are wonderful to think about. And Andy Martinez told me once that Johnny Miller played a stretch of golf where the farthest an iron shot ever deviated from the flag was like 3-4 feet. And Andy doesn't lie. I believe in Andy. It's just said, you know, you look at the data and nobody's that straight now. Nobody. Now, I did argue, because I went to one of these clinics with Scott and Lou, and they were talking about, you know, with this club wedge, you aim 5 steps to the right, maybe 4, and this one 6. And it was always, you know, within the parameters. There were very few times that you could just go right at it. And if there's no trouble around it, you could go right at it. And and they gave me a chart, and I said, these are the averages. And I said, so, all right, so here's my question. So if Tiger Woods is playing around a golf at his best, and he is on average feet better than second best, and about 4, 5, 6 feet better than the average, these are his numbers? And they said, yeah, those are his numbers. I was like, okay, and that we can have these disagreements. I mean, I think they're brilliant guys, but in my view, I can't imagine Tiger Woods having exactly those conservative numbers. But again, Tiger Woods famously said, major championships, middle of the green, 2-putt until a birdie opportunity comes along. So, you know, I think these guys, and Scott and Lou are the best 2 examples right now. They're properly training players how to play golf the way it used to take veterans 10 years to sort of figure out. They've shortened vastly shortened the apprenticeship necessary in the game of golf.
So, okay, Brandel, you brought up something that I really want to discuss a little bit. Let's go back to the 18th hole at TPC.
Yeah.
The year I beat Tiger, I hit 3-wood off that tee to the right-hand side of the fairway every time.
Didn't think about the angle.
Didn't think about the angle. That's just where I knew that I could be the most successful at all the time. Right. I got a 1-shot lead. We're headed to the tee on the 18th hole, and never, ever thought about hitting 3-wood. I thought about hitting driver. Here is the reason why. I had to have the last shot into the green. I could not step off the gas against Tiger. I had to keep the momentum going. I had to have the last shot in. He had, because he had eagled 16, he had the tee. He'd already hit his Stinger 2-iron down there, 260 yards. I knew I couldn't hit my 3-wood past his 2-iron.
Wow.
So the only way that I could get it, it was my moment in time right there. And that's where I'm trying to get to. I believe that every great player, I love what Scott does, but great players deviate from that at times.
Yeah, right. I agree with you.
They have to become great. They have to have the leniency for the moment, whatever that moment is. They spent all these years learning how to play golf, learning the nerve endings and the insulation.
Yeah.
They have to trust that at the time. And there was no doubt in my mind when I pulled that driver where that driver was going.
Well, and how set it up for Brandel too, where you're going with what happened on 17 this year.
Well, okay, that's great. That was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. I don't think guys are trying to win enough. I think there's like Lee Westwood gets there. It's his moment in time. All they've been talking about is he hadn't won over here like he should have won. He hadn't won a major. And he gets to 17, and he may have pulled that ball over there. I have no idea if he pulled that ball over there, but I can tell you right now, Tiger Woods would have aimed right at that flag because he was trying to win every tournament. I mean, he didn't start the tournament that way, but that moment is there. It's your time. If I'd have been Lee Westwood, I'm not taking away from his girlfriend, but if I'd have been on Lee Westwood's back, I'd have said, hey, it's time. This is our moment. Let's take it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with you about situational awareness trumping statistical
averages.
The privation of statistical data, just having it right there in front of you. I'll give you a tremendous, at least it might be one of the best examples of what you're talking about. I was playing in the final group at Hartford with Stuart Sink, and Stuart snap hooks it up on the hill on the 17th at Hartford. And if you know the hole, it's a dogleg right water off the tee and water, essentially an island green. I mean, and I just hit it perfect. I'm one back. I hit it perfect right down the middle of the fairway. I've got wedge into the back right hole location. And I hear his caddy was Frank, good looking guy, Frank. I've forgotten Frank's last name. And Stewart is talking about laying up. And I'm sure all the data would have had him to lay up. And I heard Frank say to him, he goes, no, you can get this ball on the green. He goes, and Stewart was a rookie, I believe, but he goes, chances to win do not come around very often. They just don't. And he was like, you can get this ball on the green. And he talked Stewart into hitting this shot. And when he hit the shot, I remember standing like yesterday. I'm standing in the fairway. I see this ball and I think that's going in the water. I just won this tournament. And that ball did not go in the water. It landed on the green. And he two putted. And I hit it pretty close, but missed it. Hit it pretty close to the last and missed it. And he won. And I don't think he might not have won if he had laid up. He might not. I might have beat him in a playoff. But that was Frank, who had a lot of experience as caddy. Essentially doing what you just said. Situational awareness can trump, all of the statistical conservative plans prior to. And I think you're probably right about Tiger. I mean, Tiger, I think better as good as anyone, maybe better than anyone, and it could quantify in the moment where the data needed to be altered, and it's not just 100% of the time I'm taking it, 15 feet left of the hole with this club, or 15 feet right of the, on the fat side of the target with this club. I talked, a few years ago when Ian Poulter came to the 17th hole, he finished second there, but he did the same thing. He hit it out to the fat of the hole and then hit a miraculous shot, a third or fourth shot into 18 to save bogey, or I believe, and finished second. And I said the same thing, that he really wasn't playing to win. Ian got really mad at me, and I said, look, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done the same thing. If I was trying to keep my card, or there's $500, $600, $700, $800 million online there, but it is the rare athlete that can have the quiet sense, the calm in that moment to assess everything in front of him, and then the bold athlete to break away from a previous thought out strategy and say, I'm taking this one right at the hole. And that's what that 17th hole is designed for. Are you bold enough to take on that pin? And then you shouldn't be, but if you're one back playing 17, are you more likely to birdie 17 or birdie 18? You got a wedge in your hands on the 17th tee.
So that particular tournament in 2000, Tiger eagled 16 to get within one of me. He's got the tee on 17 and he fires it right at the flag.
Did he really?
He fired it right at the flag. And honestly, I thought it was in the water the whole time. It landed. There was probably less than a foot of high rough past the pilings. It landed in there and stayed in there. But it was right. He didn't hit it as good as he should have hit it. But it was, he was going right at the flag. He's trying to win the golf tournament.
He wasn't 30 feet left.
No, he wasn't 30 feet left. I was the one that had to hit it 30 feet left.
Yes, of course.
And what people don't really realize is that's not an easy two-putt from up there.
Hell no.
That green is so fast going that direction that it's really, you got to make a 3 or 4 footer coming back if you don't make it.
You've heard me tell this story, but I got to tell it. And I don't know if your audience has heard it, so just give me just a second. But that year, you and I got paired on Saturday at the LA Open. You had played with Tiger Thursday, Friday, and I knew you had played with Tiger, okay, because everybody knows who's playing with Tiger, and you and I were playing well. I mean, so we're going down the first couple of holes on Saturday, and I said, how was it playing with Tiger? And you said, I beat his ass. And I said, yeah, you did. And you said you had said that to, some people close to you. And they were like, so you're not leading the golf tournament. And you said to them, you don't understand. He needs to know, and I need to know that I can beat his ass. He needs to know it, and I need to know it. And so I remember thinking it, and you said it with a fierceness, and it was in your eyes. And I thought to myself, well, that is next level. That's next level thought. That's next level thinking. That is a man preparing for battle. And you and I were good enough friends. I respected you, I admired you, and I learned from you. And I thought, that's just next level brilliance, because you couldn't hit the ball as far or as high or do the things nobody could that Tiger could. But you were saying to him, and in fact, like, if you're not at your best, I can take you down. And so we fast forward now to the Players Championship, and nobody would have known what I knew besides you, was that you were getting ready mentally to compete with Tiger at the LA Open months before. And so when you were going head to head, it's like I felt like I had the inside track onto how you were competing with him mentally, because the people that stood to gain the most or were in his talent sort of atmosphere, not many were, but you were there. Those were not typically the ones that did the best against him. They were the ones like Bob May or Chris DeMarcos, Nick O'Hearns. They were lesser players that had nothing to lose in I'd say in the stratosphere of golf from a reputation standpoint or from a psychological standpoint. It tended to be the middle of the road player, but you were within his stratosphere. And there you were psychologically preparing yourself to do battle with Tiger. And that goes beyond, the strategy of golf. That goes into getting yourself ready to put yourself into a situation where strategy does matter. And in this particular instance, it was how you were going to play 17 and how you were going to play 18. The hair stood up on the back of my neck as you were telling that story about hitting driver off 18, because you knew that you couldn't give him the sort of psychological advantage of hitting after you into the 18th hole, because who knows what he'd have done.
Yeah. So, it's really funny. If Freddie, you remember Freddie, my cat. This whole thing was strategized with him, and he and I had a plan that if we got to 18 and we had the lead, we were going to drive it. We knew he was going to hit that 2-iron. We were going to drive it.
Y'all talked about that? Yeah. Y'all talked about that? Or
Oh, yeah. So the minute I hold out the putt on 17, he didn't hit a very good chip on 17. He made about an 8-foot hard left to right breaking putt. And I had run it by the hole about 4 feet, and I make the putt. Well, Tiger's already gone, and Freddie puts the pin in, and the minute he puts the pin in, he starts in on me. You're the best driver of the ball. You know you're the best driver of the ball. Hit the driver, because he didn't want me to deviate from that, which there was no deviating from that in my mind. But that's what a good caddy would do, is let's get on point. Let's do exactly what we planned on doing, And he didn't give a second for a bad thought to come into my head all the way to the 18th tee. All he did was pump me up as to what a good driver of the ball I was. So these are things that people need to learn out there. I mean, I'm so glad we're talking about these things, because they're powerful things that young kids need to learn.
Yeah, I mean, those are just deep dive, nuanced, situational aspects. But I mean, that's just great strategy, great thinking, clear mind. That's why, I never really had the opportunity to sit around and listen to Jackie Burke. I've tried to devour everything he says in print. So I've never actually met the man, but that's why I think, sitting around talking golf with the greatest players of all time is valuable. There's one or two things that happens. Older players sort of look back and they don't realize how good they were. You hear that in most great players. They sort of don't really realize, so they don't really take the time to flush out all these thoughts like you did. And they're so valuable because that's how the sausage gets made right there. I mean, that's if you don't have that thought, if you go over there and hit 3-wood and then you've got 4-iron into the green or 3-iron, who knows? And then you hit it 30 feet and Tiger smells blood in the water and he gets pumped up and he stuffs it in there and he makes, who knows? But you were thinking, nope, I'm not giving him the psychological advantage. He's going to have to hit his second shot, not knowing what I'm going to do on my second shot.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, he doesn't know, Tiger doesn't know whether to take the chance or not take the chance. But if you've already hit your shot into the green, he knows exactly what to do.
Well, in my opinion, and get back on the decade stuff, I think it is great stuff for younger players to learn how to get better quickly. You will never become the great player that causes people to talk about you without deviating from that at the right time. And that's my thought.
And that's where I want to go a little deeper into this just real quickly. Brandel, you mentioned situational awareness, and it's something that Hal and I have been talking about a lot on here. And I think it's beautiful because, to me, in a perfect world, if you're working on tour, your caddy needs to be decade. Your caddy needs to be hit it here, hit it here, hit it here. But then when you step up on 17, one shot behind and you've been pure in your irons, it's a perfect number. You catch the wind at a perfect time. You're a PGA Tour player. You can hit a 135-yard shot within 4 or 5 feet. Like if it's that right number. And that's what I want you guys to touch base on. Like, when do you override it? And when do you say, no, I'm going to aim 10 feet left. And if I do pull it, I'm going to hit it to 30 feet and have to 2-putt. And if I do feint it, it's still okay. It's in the bunker. It's on the green. Like, when do you really, override the red light and turn it into a green light?
Well, that's exactly it. That's like, how often do you have a chance to win? And you're like, is it worth the risk? Okay, if I go at it and hit it in the water, it's going to cost me a lot of money. But how many times do you really have to win? I mean, in golf, you make it to the Hall of Fame if you win 3% of the time. So you don't have, if you win 3% of the time, you extrapolate, play 500 tournaments, 3% of the time anymore, that's 15 wins. Okay. That's going to get you in the Hall of Fame. It's borderline going to get you in the Hall of Fame. So you just don't have that many chances to win. So when you do have a chance to win and you have from a percentage standpoint, hitting a short iron to a target that's probably 20 feet from that slope over there, 25 feet from that slope over there to the edge of the green, it's doable. It's doable by the best player in the world at that moment. So, you have to, as Hal just said, you weigh the options. You obviously take into effect how you're hitting the golf ball. Your caddy's going to take that into effect. And you're like, now's your moment, Now's your moment. Yeah, you're going to make a lot of money, but winning the players is it's a step to the Hall of Fame. It's a colossal achievement. So every player faces moments like that in a week, making the cut, finishing in the top 10. You have all these mini sort of hurdles you're trying to get at, or mini goals, but there's nothing like winning a golf tournament. I won once in my career on the tour, one dadgum time. And it's, people love to give me grief about only having won once, but I remember every moment of that week. I remember what I thought. I remember the situations. I remember the chances I took, the safe plays I made. And, it's still it's a beautiful, it takes me to beautiful places thinking about that week.
So I got another question for you, Brandel. How many times did you finish second?
I think about 4 or 5. I lost a couple playoffs.
Okay. So you don't even know exactly.
Exactly. I don't.
You just made my point. I don't know how many times I finished second, but you knew how many times you won, and I know how many times I won. People are missing the point.
Yeah.
We play golf to win. And I'm not saying you start on the first hole of the 72-hole tournament thinking about trying to win the tournament. I'm thinking that as you get there, that moment begins to present itself. And when the moment is right there, they will never remember you if you finish second.
That's right. I mean, it's exactly right. It's like, I get strategy, and it's, as I said, Jack Nicklaus conservative, Hogan was conservative, Tiger was conservative. I don't think that's, and you just said, I mean, I don't know anybody hit the golf ball straighter than you, maybe Calvin Pete. Calvin Pete also won there. But if you're taking a conservative line off of 18 down the right side, what the hell am I doing trying to curve it around that corner and gain an angle? If you're taking a conservative line. That's how good you are and how conservative you are there. But does that mean that you're not going to hit driver there on Sunday because you don't want Tiger to have the psychological advantage of having you hit your tee shot or second shot in there, and you want the psychological advantage of getting to hit your second shot after him? That's just being in the moment. That's being in the moment, and also being a chess player, which is a cognitive. That's the great thing about golf. It's not just a physical game; it's a cognitive game.
That's exactly right. I got another question for you. Chase and I were at the Open Forum, and we were trying to think maybe 2013 or something like that. And you were not a fan of the technology at that time, TrackMan and things like that. Where are you now? And, have you changed your tune?
I wasn't a fan of technology then, and I'll tell you why, because I thought teaching was wrong then. And they were using it to validate flawed ideas. I thought teaching was just off its rocker at that point. At that point, stack and tilt still held sway, and stack and tilt descendants and spinoffs still held sway. It was still teaching Tiger Woods, staying centered, left centered, and they were all walking around saying, we're using this data, it validates what we're doing. And I knew they were wrong. And so I just coupled the data or the instruments with the teachers and said, you guys are all nuts. The data is the instruments are great. If I were teaching, I'd have every one of them. And if I were playing golf, I'd have every one of them. But they've all come full circle. I mean, teaching has changed drastically from 2013, 2014. They're the reason I wrote Anatomy of Greatness, the reason I wrote that book is because I was like, I think teaching has lost its mind. I know the greats didn't do these things. I'm going to do my part, whatever small part I can, to shift the pendulum back to a rational discussion about teaching. And I spent a whole book showing how nobody stayed centered. Nobody stayed centered. And nobody kept their head centered. And nobody stayed left in the backswing. And that you could pick up club head speed by simply turning more and lifting your lead heel. It wasn't a year and a half later, Sean Foley sent me video of Hunter Mahan, Sean O'Hare, can't believe it, somebody else. All of them, he said, Justin Rose. And he sent me, I could dig it up on my phone. And he's like, these guys are swinging 8 miles an hour. I'm just getting them to lift their lead heel. So right after that, Justin Rose won, the U.S. Open shortly after that. That was in January of 2013. Right after that, Justin Rose won the U.S. Open. Right after that, Justin Rose got longer. And I'm not saying I have a huge part in it, but I have a small part in it. And I think the measuring devices in long distance drivers and being able to trace their movement patterns. And that's with this data. That's with these forensic devices. Those things helped understand the movement patterns of power. And so I have changed my opinion about all of that stuff 180 degrees. I'd have it all if I taught. Now, that doesn't mean I'd be, because I love information. The more information, the better. Why would I guess? But back then, I conflated the sort of the TrackMan with the people who were using the TrackMan. And I thought they were all wrong. I knew they were wrong because no great players did what they were teaching at the time. And and now then teaching has evolved, and all of those, the flight scopes, the TrackMan, the pressure plates, 3D cameras, they're fantastic. I'd have them all. I'd even now when I go out and practice, I put a flight scope right out there, and I'm always looking at the data. I love it.
Brandel, do you think, and we have all that stuff here, so you're preaching to the choir with us. Do you think one of the things that Hal and I always had an interesting discussion about when we got together was, because I was on the data side and he was on the PGA Tour victory side, right?
Yeah.
Was who's the data for? And I think early on, Hal didn't like the data or was skeptical of it because he thought we were going to give all the data to all of our players. And it was more like, no, the data's we got to view ourselves as doctors in the grand scheme of things. And the data in my mind is for the instructor, just like you said, not to guess. We don't have to guess as much if we've got the data. Do you agree? Would you have been a player back in the day? Like Bryson wanted everything. He wanted to know exactly what every joint and every muscle was doing when we would suit him up in 3D, and he'd want to know it the day before, Colonial. I'm like, Bryson, no, quit worrying about all that stuff. But he loved it. Would you have been one that really, wanted all the data? Would you just want the one little piece that would have helped you play better?
Well, when I was playing, I didn't want the data because I knew the data didn't lead to better golf because it was flawed. And I just intuited. I knew it was flawed. I knew teaching was flawed. I just didn't know how it was flawed. Now then, if I was playing golf, I would want the data. I mean, I like data. I like information. I like those deep dives. Along those lines, I was on our set at the Arnold Palmer Invitational this year. Behind my set, I see Sean Foley out there working with Justin Rose. I knew they had broken up. So seeing them together, I thought, what's going on? So I got off the show and I called Sean and I said, what's going on here? What are you doing? What are you guys working on? And, in the course of the conversation, he says to me that he's also working with Lydia Ko. And he said that, one of the things that was hard working with Lydia Ko was getting her to sort of clean the slate and just play golf. And he said she was hitting a shot and going back and looking at the data, hitting a shot, going back and looking at the data. And Sean says to Lydia, what are you doing? Why are you hitting a shot and going looking at the data? And she said, well, that's what Justin Rose does. And Sean goes, yeah, if Justin Rose wasn't a golfer, he'd be an engineer. If you weren't a golfer, you'd be an artist. And so there's a difference. If you're a teacher, you have to understand that, and then, eons ago, how Harvey Pinnock was teaching Ben Crenshaw and Tom Kite. Tom Kite, if he wasn't a golfer, would be an accountant or an engineer. And Crenshaw would be drawing the most beautiful art you've ever seen. And so Harvey Pinnock intuited what Sean Foley was saying to Lydia Ko and Justin Rose. I'm more of a Justin Rose, Tom Kite. I would love the data. Because if I'm teaching too, if I was teaching, I would want all the data because I would look for connections and parallels. And I would try to think and I would try to inform my teaching so that when I go teach a student, I could more accurately describe to them how to connect the dots, cause and effect. Here's cause and effect. Now, they don't need to know how I know it. They don't need that. I don't need to tell my student how smart I am by saying, look, I've done this data, that data, this data, that data. I just need to say, you need to feel more on top of it. You need to feel like your spine angles more this way. And automatically their path is going to be more to the left, and the face is going to be, more to the left. So I'm more of a data geek. I don't know what Hal is. My guess is I think Hal's more of a player, but I don't know. He said blend, I think.
Well, one of the things that I get frustrated with when in teaching is people come in here and they see TrackMan numbers, and they say, well, I'd like to be 2 or 3 to the right, positive 2 or 3. And that always frustrates me because I'm looking for their personal best, whatever that is. That may be, 2 to the left. It may, instead of just an automatic 2 to the right. And, what we try to tell everybody that comes in here is you're on a journey to get better. And it's your personal journey. This will be personal to you, not what everybody else that's come along in the game has done. So let's find out where you need to be. And, I've changed through the years. I was the lateral guy. And, Jimmy talked about, we'll go back, Jimmy Ballard talked about, throwing it, pinching the dime. And there isn't a teacher in the world that would do that right now. Not a teacher in the world. And here's the truth. I lost all of my distance, all of my energy. The minute I did that, it was gone.
You did.
And, there's not a single teacher in America right now or anywhere else in the world that would teach that.
No.
Now, Jimmy wasn't malicious. It's what he thought.
Yeah.
And by the way, Curtis and I had darn good careers, and we believed that.
Amazing. But y'all are a testament to how important it is to be a bad student. You probably didn't do all those things. and back then, you guys made it because 1, you had strong minds. 2, you worked your ass off. 3, you looked at empirical evidence. Like, what's that ball doing? I can do it. And 4, you were just bad students. Because if you did those things, if you casted like that on the way down, I mean, you probably casted a little bit, but not probably like Jimmy Ballard wanted you to.
And Brandel, it's interesting you said, like, Mark Brooks was in here for the Insperity the other day, and he brought up a comment that instructors have told me. They said they don't care exactly the route you go down swing method wise, as long as you believe in it and work on it. Meaning, like, you believe in it, like you said, Curtis and Hal had the mindset, but they also worked really hard. Like, there's a million different ways to do it. And that goes back to this Furyk point of Furyk. I wholeheartedly believe this too. He could have won as much as he did with any golf swing. Like, as long as it was a functional golf swing, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be a 10 handicap hitting it. But, it goes back to this, and it goes back to Hal's point of, it's not just golf swing. It's belief. It's the situational awareness stuff that you guys talked about so beautifully at the Players. It's all this stuff. It's hitting to a back left pin on 13 at Augusta off a hanging lie, and knowing that ball doesn't want to turn as much as it usually does. Like, just those little things that you guys were so good at.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. I think Mark was, one of the smartest golfers I ever played with. Didn't have the physical skills, didn't hit it long, but Mark was very good at, he said, I thought, one of the more brilliant things I've ever heard anybody say. I've tried to incorporate this into, how I talk about, strategy. He was like, why is a fade better than a draw? Historically, Jack was a fader, Hogan fader, Tiger fader. You hear everybody now talking about the benefits of fade. Why is it better? And okay, yeah, sure, you can clear as hard as you want and hold off, and it just feels easier to do that. But into the green, there has to be some benefit to it. And Mark was like, yeah, because fades finish out to the right, and they stop quicker, which means that you're more likely going to have uphill putts that break right to left, which are a higher make percentage putts. Data shows that. He goes, so imagine, he didn't say it quite like this, but imagine over a day, a week, a month, a year, a career, having more uphill putts that break right to left. And I thought, okay, that's brilliant, and that's how smart Mark is. I think Mark's a very smart guy. So we're all learning. But the thing that's interesting about Jimmy Ballard is Jimmy Ballard, and you know this, how he learned from Sam Bird. Right. And Sam Bird was a backup to Babe Ruth, or he played on those famous teams with the Yankees, and supposedly a guy who, and this is how easy information can be misconstrued. Sam Bird learned from Babe Ruth, and he learned the secret of power, or at least in his mind, from the greatest power hitter the baseball game had ever seen. And he extrapolated that to golf, and then he gave it to Jimmy Ballard. And Jimmy Ballard's move was nothing about power. It was about accuracy. And so you're talking about from Babe Ruth to Hal Sutton. There's a link there, right? But what Babe Ruth talked about were his keys to power is not too dissimilar from Hogan's 5 fundamentals. What they talk about and what they did are two different things. I mean, now, Babe would turn, he would turn, like if you had an aerial camera, if you had a camera above his head, you saw the trace patterns of the butt end of his bat. It would be in a tight circle. It'd be a very tight hub, and it'd be rotation and holding that bat off. But he talked about getting the bat out in front of him. And shared that with Sam. Sam shared it with Jimmy Ballard. And so Jimmy Ballard talks about getting that club out in front of him. So it's so easy for what a player actually does to be, in a feel sense, transferred to somebody else and completely misconstrued. I used to think, when I now look at Jimmy Ballard, what did Jimmy get right? Jimmy got movement off of the ball. So I would laud Jimmy compared to Stack and Till, because at least Jimmy got movement up here and then movement towards the ball. So you're controlling spine angle. You're moving on top of the ball with spine angle. Stack and tilt would be here, and then on the transition, they're here. So at least Jimmy, whether he knew it or not, had one part of it right, which was you're on top of it. And that's how Curtis Strange hit it so straight. It's how House hit it so straight. They were up on top of it. If Jimmy had said, well, you got to move off of the ball and then feel weight as you transition, they wouldn't have done it. Hal wouldn't have done it, and Curtis wouldn't have done it. But because they probably went to Jimmy and they went, they hit it straight, man. You cover the ball. Jimmy was teaching a real straight hitting golf swing, just not powerful.
It's funny that you bring this up. This is really bringing back some memories to me. Every time I'd go see Jimmy Ballard, he'd make me move the ball way forward. And I used to say, why do you make me move it so far forward? He said, because I want you to have to move a lot to get up to it to cover it.
Damn. That's
and so does that play right into your
yes.
Man, I mean, I'd leave there and I would never put it as far forward as he wanted it forward. And he wanted you to really chase forward to get to it. He wanted you behind it at the top of your swing in your backswing, and then he wanted you to really go get it.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. He got this right.
Hard part,
that's what he preached.
The hard part for me was you have all this movement off, you're springing the shaft out away from you while you're also trying to move forward, like the balancing point. And Hal, tell the story about how you had one of his assistants go caddy for you.
Well, I kept hitting it left all the time. And Jimmy said, there's no reason why you should be hitting it left all the time. And I said, I'm telling you, I can't do it. So I can't keep from doing it. And so finally I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire Chris. Chris can work for me for a year. He can report back to you all the time. And, Chris left after that. He's like, I run him out of it because he agreed with me. One of the things, I mean, I love Jimmy to death. He's a great guy. He worked his heart out to try to teach people to be better. But so much of what we've talked about today is people were doing the best they could with what they had, which wasn't very much.
Absolutely.
And for every kid and every golfer that's listening to us right now, the tools that are available to get better, if you get with the right teacher and they have their heart and mind into it, the chances of getting better are so much greater now than they ever were before. We're, as you put it earlier, we're not guessing anymore. We're actually have some facts that we can draw off of.
That's exactly right. I used to say, I guess I still say, is that, eons ago, if you were lucky enough to run into the right teacher, okay, you had to be, and that teacher was lucky enough to have stumbled onto ideas that worked because they were guessing and players were guessing going to teachers. So those two things had to happen. You had to be lucky enough to run into the right teacher, and the teacher had to be lucky enough to stumble onto the right ideas. And then you had to have amazing dedication, discipline, and mental fortitude and perseverance and all those other things. You had a chance to make the tour. It's lucky that Jack Nicklaus ran into Jack Grout. Pure luck that he ran into a teacher that had studied through another player. He had studied under Alex Morrison, who was, who he taught things like keeping the head back, right? And transition, talked about getting to your left side. He had all these great ideas that, he shared with Harry Picard, who shared with Ben Hogan, and Ben Hogan and Jack Grout were friends. So Jack Grout learned it from Ben Hogan. And then he took these ideas and gave them to Jack Nicklaus. He's lucky. Jack was lucky that he happened to be in the company of Jack Grout. And there's other instances of that. Tom Watson was lucky that he was in the company of Stan Thurst, who taught him to have high hands. Jack, Tom wanted to swing like Sam Snead, but hit it high like Jack. So he was like, well, you got to get your hands up here. And then you had to have all those other things. Now then, you're right. teaching across the board is so much better. Like, I listen to and hang on the word of teachers now. And before, I would just argue with them, and I still enjoy arguing with Lucas Wald about where the left leg goes, because he's talking power and I'm talking players. But teaching is so much more precise now. If something makes it to a cover of a magazine now, it's been vetted for the most part. And before, it was just, somebody saying, hey, you got to shift right and shift left. I mean, there's some good stuff in there, but nobody would put that idea. That idea doesn't make it. Stack and tilt doesn't make it. Shift right, shift left doesn't make it anymore in the magazine. Better ideas, better teaching. You're not guessing anymore, and the student is going to benefit.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say, Brandel, you mentioned arguing. Give me the biggest Twitter argument that you've gotten into that you wish the people you were arguing against you could convince them that you were as right as you thought you were.
Well, look, I fought with the stack and tilt guys, and they had, I always, I was on a plane once with all of them, a private plane with all the stack and tilt guys, and all their descendants, their converts were on there. And I fought with all of them. I was like, you've not shown me one piece of video that is from straight 90 degrees in front of the player. You show it all skewed to the left. So of course they're going to look like they're hanging towards the target. So, a lot of stack and tilters, and, like Grant Wade, I like Grant a lot, but there was a point in time where Grant was a left-leaning, left-teaching sort of stack and tilter like Sean Foley. I got swings of Grant. Golf Machine people, I know there's a million interpretations. So you go read Golf Machine. On page 12 of the Golf Machine, a book that wants you to believe in very detailed, specific pieces of data, cannot get something as simple as the head does not. On page 12 of that book, it talks about how the head must stay centered. It must stay centered. And it was like, I would say, well, how do you expect me to believe more difficult aspects of this book when it can't get the simplest thing right? Okay. It misses the simplest thing, doesn't even sniff it. Okay. And you want me to believe all this other stuff. And so I've done a deep dive into Golf Machine, and I have, the data in my phone, because I've talked to people who know a lot more about science than I do. And we've looked at that book, and they broke it down where it gets things wrong. And then I've seen the Golf Machine destroy so many different golf games. Now Bryson comes along, and so I fought with Golf Machine people. I fought with stack and tilt people. I fought with Grant Wade. Grant and I are friends. He blocked me. I blocked him. I can't even remember. We ended up somewhere. I'm like, bro, look, I just disagree with your thoughts on the swing. And Twitter's a tough place to fight, to sort of weed out nuance. I said, I could show you video where nobody swings like that. And now ironically enough, I got paired with Grant Wade at the final of Champions Tour Q School 2019. And Grant doesn't hang left anymore. And Grant bombs it, and can still hit it great. But yeah, debating with all those people, Steve Elkington and I'm not going to say he and I were buddies, but we grew up together playing college golf. And I certainly enjoyed Steve, but, Steve's a pretty tough guy. He's quick, he's opinionated, he's smart, all that. Steve and he blocked me, I blocked him. Because I can go back and show you, and if Steve's listening to this, I was like, Steve, I can show you exactly where your ball striking fell off. Now, there may be contributing reasons for that, your problem with allergies and grasses and injuries, whatnot, but it suspiciously fell off when you got tied up with Golf Machine. And I have all of his data, and I know the before and the after, and I know exactly when he started working with Golf Machine, or pretty darn close, because he wrote the foreword to one of their books. And so, yeah, I debate, I don't like losing friends. I enjoy, and that's the thing. Teachers were always fun to debate. But there was a period of time where the stack and tilt and the Golf Machine people became very militant in their opinions. And I always said the proof's in the pudding. Show me who swings like that. Show me if they're leading in ball striking, leading in distance, and all these wonderful other statistics. Show me where that is. show me when they get better. And if they get better, I will throw my hands up, say I was dead wrong, you were dead right. The proof's in the pudding, and it never happened to Stag and Tilt. It never happened with Golf Machine. But Golf Machine doesn't get a lot of play these days. I argue with Chuck Cook because Chuck Cook's a big proponent of Golf Machine, and I've argued with him in front of all the best teachers in the world. He'd stand up and take issue with something I'd said. He's done it several times when I'm at conferences, and I like Chuck, but he and I don't see eye to eye on that.
Well, Brandel, this has been great. Well, you've spent a lot of time with us. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm not going to block you.
Hey, listen, that would break my heart because I love reading your tweets. They're right what golf needs, this holistic approach. There's more than one way to get it done. And, how I'm such a fan of yours as a player and as an intellect. And I just enjoy you. I really do. I always had. And Chase, it's so nice to meet you and catch up. And it's a great team that you guys have. It really is. And I wish you all the best and keep doing what you're doing. I really enjoy it. The golf world needs it. You two guys are great. I don't know what it is about Texas that just brings all the best together about golf, but you're right down there at the mecca of the game of golf with Jackie Burke and all the boys out there at Champions. Hal.
Well, we appreciate you being on, and I know everybody listening is going to enjoy this. So thanks again, Brandel.
My pleasure. Trust me. Take care, fellas.
Take care. All right.
Again, you said wow after the first one. I would say wow after that one too. There were so many good nuggets. I thought you guys talking about the situational awareness stuff was, I think it's so incredibly important for every serious golfer to be able to sit there in the moment and make the best decision they can, whether it's to win a club championship, whether it's to break 80 for the first time. What's the decision? Can we commit to it? Can we accept if it doesn't turn out the way we were hoping that it would?
Well, we talked about a lot of things on there. He's a proponent in Decade and Scott Fawcett. He agrees with playing conservative. He talked a lot about playing conservative. I played conservative. You don't start out on the first hole trying to win the tournament. Right. You start out on the first hole trying to put one good shot next to another good shot next to another good shot, and then you hope that situation occurs at the end of the tournament where you have to make a decision. Yeah. And it may not be a mathematical equation. Yeah. It may be, this is my moment in time to set myself apart from the rest of the people in the game. Sure. Brandel talks about that in this podcast, and I really appreciate. He talked about Stuart Sink, when he had a chance to win at Hartford, and his caddy talked him into hitting the shot. Yeah. We talked about Lee Westwood at TPC this year. That bothered me. I thought I really wanted to be on Lee's back so I could say, "Come on, man, this is your time. Yeah. Let's take it." Right. All of you as a golfer are going to run across those times where it's your moment. Yeah. Recognize it and make a good decision that you can commit to.
He talked about something that we talk a lot about in here. Is the student in front of you an engineer, or are they more of an artist? And I think that's so important for you guys listening at home to make sure that your instructors know. Look, I'm more of a data nerd. I like the numbers. I like to get as much information as I can. Or no, I'm more of a visual. I'm going to see the shot, feel the shot, do all that stuff more from an artistic standpoint, because it's so important. If your instructor's teaching everybody the exact same way, he might not get to your artistic mind as well as he would somebody else that's more of an engineer. I thought that was awesome.
Well, it was awesome. I'm more the opposite. I think Brandel's more of a data guy, and you're more of a data guy. I'm more of a give me one thing and let me see where that leads us. Yeah. And one of the things that he talked about a lot in here was left hip up over your left foot instead of inside the left foot. And it brought back many, many memories for me, because I got on top of it as hard as anybody in the game. And when my hip started hurting, I didn't get on it as hard as I used to. Yep. And I kind of tried to become somebody else, and because my left hip didn't get there. Right. And, So this was kind of really important for Hal Sutton to hear this, is my point. You know, Brandel taught me a little bit. It wasn't new information for me. It was a reminder of what I used to do that made me want to get up and hit balls.
And I think this goes back to, you know, we got into some golf swing stuff and some theory. You're talking about the left hip and stuff. To me, I think a couple of things. One, everything needs to be in moderation.
Right.
You know, we can overdo anything. You know, I'll bring up stack and tilt. He mentioned stack and tilt a few times. I would consider Andy Plummer, Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett. Andy Plummer founded stack and tilt to be one of the best instructors in the country. He's phenomenal. But the problem is, you know, his system, he's taught a lot of other instructors how to teach some of the stuff he believes, and some of it's gotten exaggerated and gone a little too far, and so now it's turned into this some too far into left-leaning movements, where if you just called stack and tilt a fairly centered golf swing, no one would have too many issues with it, you know. But it goes into, if Jimmy Ballard told Hal Sutton to move off the ball a little bit, there's a certain amount that works, and it's something that you talk about all the time, ebbing and flowing through perfection, right? And it's so easy to go too far, whether it's we're trying not to slide so much to hit it farther, whether we're trying to slide a little bit more to control low point with irons. I guess my overall arching theme on this would be, for you guys at home listening, find what works the best for you. When you're swinging at your best, when you're playing your best, get as much data as you can on how you're moving it. We do it with all of our college players. They play in 12 tournaments a year. We try to figure out, you know, we've both taught a really good player at Texas, and you know, he sent me a message the other day and said, I'm swinging at the best I have. Here's all my videos. And like, for me as an instructor, I love that, because it's like, here it is. He says he's a phenomenal ball striker. He says this is what feels the best to him, and the ball's doing what we want it to do. Now we have it. When he comes back in the middle of the summer after playing in the wind or doing this or doing that, hey, look, you're a little this way, you're a little this way. And that's where there's just not one way. We talked about it with Furyk. We talked about it on there a bunch. There's not one way to swing a golf club. There's not one set black and white way to play golf. You need to be committed. You need to have a game plan. You need to believe in yourself. But after that, you know, pick a path that works best for Hal Sutton, Chase Cooper, for you guys at home, and live by it.
Well, we talked about it a lot on here. You know, Chase and I talk about it almost every podcast that we have about this is your personal journey, and seek what is best for you, not necessarily what the world has decided is best. And, you know, we have people come in here all the time that, you know, I get it all the time. I want to be +2, +3 to the right on TrackMan, inside to out. And what they don't understand is the more I swing inside to out, the harder it is to control my low point. Low point moves back a little bit closer to the ball. It's just, a lot of these things are hard, more difficult.
Well, and you can't just change path without the rest of the system changing.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And you know, we talked about data being important to the teacher more so than it is to the student. If you're not a real student of everything when it comes to golf, data could really slow you down in the process.
Exactly right.
So the teacher needs to understand the data more so than the student does. So, you know, I just loved everything that Brandel said. He's smart enough. He's eloquent with the way he says it, and it's, you know, it just makes sense. And you know, I felt fortunate that we were able to have Brandel on here. As Chase said, he's a needle mover, and one of the reasons why he is because he's opinionated. It's not a guess. It's educated. He's done the study on it, yeah. and he will debate you on it.
That's what I was going to say. He's not going to throw something out and then hide behind the tweet. Like he'll back up his thoughts.
Yes.
And I love that. Whether we believe that you should swing, get the high hands, and lift the left heel or not, that's really a moot point. You know, obviously, golf swing wise, we're a big fan of unrestricted hip turns. We've said that on here a ton. But again, he has an opinion. He's done his research, and he believes he has data. He has facts to back it up. And I love people that aren't afraid to step out on the ledge with some info behind it.
Well, what Brandel did here is he set the bar high for whoever we have on here next, because he challenged us in the process, and that's what every golfer wants to be, is challenged. And I've felt challenged every time I walk out on the golf course. And, you know, when I sit down to talk about golf with somebody as intelligent as you and Brandel, Chamblee, I mean, it's a deep dive into a subject that we all care about.
Yep.
And,
Exactly.
you know, to be able to bring this to y'all is just Chase and my pleasure to be able to do this. And we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, we say it all the time. These are a lot of fun for us. We hope you guys enjoyed this two-part series with Brandel, and we'll see you next time with another awesome, fun guest.
Be the right club today. Yes!